Today, I'm going to show you a fantasy romantic drama film titled Edward Scissorhands. One snowy evening, a little girl asks her grandmother about the legend of the snow. The grandmother tells her that it was a very long story, but the girl can't doze off. The grandmother starts the story about scissors. Indeed, the story was a long one, as the grandmother reminisces what happened a long time ago. There lived a famous inventor in the town who made numerous inventions. The most peculiar thing he invented was a male figure with scissors for a hand, but what's even odder is he gave him a brain for conceiving and a heart for feeling. Sadly, the inventor passed away even before he completed the figure. The figure is named Edward. One sunny day, a woman in purple coordinates pays a visit to all the women's houses in town to sell her line of cosmetics. The saleswoman desperately ends up in Edward's ghastly-looking mansion uphill. Surprisingly, the estate had a breathtaking landscaping site. She knocks on the front door, which she opens by herself. She took the horrifying stairs and searches for the house's owner. Her search takes her to the attic with a damaged roof, and she sees several memorabilia in one of the portions of its walls. Hearing silent noises, the saleswoman looks back and sees a dark silhouette in the corner of the attic. She seems to have discerned the figure. Frightened in daylight, the saleswoman takes a step back, but the figure gently approaches closer. Not realizing the woman's disposition, Edward reaches his hands out to her. The woman, thinking that he was harmless, curiously eyes him and asks him about his parents. Edward innocently claims that his father did not wake up one day. She attempts to lightly touch Edward in his face using cotton with an astringent. The woman drives Edward to her home. When the two reach home, Peg takes him to the living room where all the family pictures are placed. Edward falls innocently in love at first sight of her daughter's photo. Peg takes him to another room where she asks Edward to change his clothes. Edward goes through the things in the room and accidentally makes a hole out of the waterbed. He finds trouble getting himself dressed. Peg eventually goes back to Edward's room and helps him redress. Outside the house, the nosy neighbors gather after seeing Peg with another man in her car. Later that night, Edward joins the family for a dinner where they never took their eyes off him for fear and amusement. Edward awkwardly fumbles over the food with his disfigured hands. Peg tucks Edward to bed that night, where Edward sleeps warmly. The next day, while the husbands in the neighborhood leave for work, Peg spends her time concealing the scars on Edward's face. Peg's husband takes his time trimming the plants in the backyard when Edward walks in and forms another plant into a dinosaur. Edward bobs another set of plants that made Peggy and her husband happy. But a woman appears in their backyard, claiming Edward came straight from the pits of hell. The woman runs away when Edward approaches her. Meanwhile, Peg opens their front door after the doorbell rang. Apparently, the neighborhood is growing curious about their family's visitor that they insisted on an afternoon barbecue feast. Edward helps Peg prepare for the feast by chopping the ingredients. Peg opens a can of pineapples that made Edward storm off of his consciousness. He daydreams about his father's invention, where several machines run through to make him dinner. His late father enjoyed his inventions so much that he came up with the idea of inventing a man with the hands of scissors. The Bog family hosts the barbecue feast in the backyard, where the neighbors gasp in awe and admiration of their well-trimmed garden. The men discreetly bully Edward, but one man appears and tells him to never let anyone regard him as handicapped for being different. The women bring their food bowls and alternately feed Edward, who can't hold a spoon without making a cut. That night, Edward daydreams again to a day in the mansion's laboratory where his father reads him boring stories and funny poems. Just outside, Kim arrives with her boyfriend's gang from a camping trip. Kim goes into her room with all her stuff, lights up the lamp and screams after seeing Edward from her mirror. Edward, who was equally as terrified to death as she was, pins and cuts the waterbed. Kim runs nervously to her parents' room, where Peg calms her down. Bill takes Edward to another vacant room, offers him some rum and complains about what happened to her daughter when she started becoming a teen. Edward takes the rum with a straw, which made him feel immediately intoxicated. Wanting the two to be friends, Peg introduces Kim to the drunk Edward, who collapses to the floor from shock. The following day, Esmeralda, one of Edward's fans, invites him to creatively trim her garden. After forming a couple of swans, she offers him a glass of lemonade which he declined with a vomit. After trimming Esmeralda's garden, Edward goes to Kevin's class. Kevin proudly shows how Edward can create paper art with his bare hands. That night, the family is having dinner with Kim's boyfriend and one of her friends. While Edward is carefully slicing a chunk of beef meat, the family happens to discuss that Edward is not charging people money for his gardening services. The awkward Edward mistakenly throws the sliced piece to Kim's lap, which made her very angry that night. Apart from trimming the plants, one of his clients discovers that Edward can actually groom her poodle. Surprisingly, The neighborhood queued along with the Boggs' backyard with their pets while some of his fanatics ask him to style their haircut. Peg is also enthusiastic that she had him cut her hair too. One day, Edward heads to the market with one of her clients. There, he witnesses how Kim and her boyfriend share a sweet kiss. Apparently, his client breaks him from the lonely trance to have him sharpen his scissors in a shop. His client drops him home, where Kim and her boyfriend waits in despair as they're both locked out without a key. Edward opens the door quickly without scratching it. Edwards has been invited with Peg to a television show where the crowd asks him about surgeries and salon and landscaping business. One lady asks him about having a girlfriend. The clueless Edward mindlessly reaches out to a microphone stand where he gets electrified. He falls backwards. Kim, who is watching the show with his boyfriend and younger brother, falls unnecessarily worried over Edward. The following day, Esmeralda takes Edward to the beauty salon, which she proposes to purchase for his business. She shows him around the salon, where she intends to seduce him. Esmeralda rides on Edward and starts to take off her clothes. Luckily for the clueless man, the dressing chair collapses backwards. Edward leaves the salon without the disappointed Esmeralda. Edward rushes to a pizzeria where the Bogg family is waiting for him. He narrates where the salon was and how Esmeralda took off her clothes in front of him in the back room, making the family uncomfortable and shocked. Bill breaks away from discomfort and tells Edward that he'll be needing a bank loan to get his business started. Peg accompanies Edwards to the banks, where his loan gets declined after the banker discovered that he has no social security number, no credit history, and no collaterals. Unfortunately, the bank does not recognize client testimonials to lend his business some amount. However, they advised him to build his credit score first before coming back again for the loan. Meanwhile, Jim and Kim are arguing about using Edward to steal from his parents. Jim somehow tricked Edward to steal with them. Even though Kim refuses to use the poor Edward, she joins his gang to break into Jim's house. They used Edward's hands to pick the locks in the place. Unfortunately, the alarm system detects and locks him up. The gang leaves the clueless Edward to be arrested by the police officers. Peg and Bill head to a detention facility after hearing Edward's misfortune. The prosecution eventually frees Edward under the grounds of mental incapacity. His lawyer argues that Edward was isolated for the majority of his life, which immensely caused his lack of judgment and morality. The news breaks out in the neighborhood, which made his fanatics doubt Edward's intention in helping them with their gardens and hairstyles. When Peg and Edward reach home after the dismissal, a swarm of journalists chase after them. Kim realizes how chaotic the situation has become and explains to Edward how hard she tried to persuade Jim to take him back from his parents' house. She feels awful telling Edward that it was Jim's parents' house, but Edward went off anyway because she was the one who told him to break into it. Jim breaks their conversation but feels unapologetic and passes the blame to Kim, who walks out on him. Edward goes mad at the sight of Jim and Kim that he leaves scratches along the wall. Bill leaves an ethical lesson to Edward, who chooses a seemingly sweet but wrong answer. Meanwhile, the former fanatic Esmeralda spreads a rumor in the neighborhood saying Edward once attempted to cut her with his hands, but she luckily escaped. With the rumor, the rest of the former fans decide not to attend Peg's invitation for Christmas dinner. On a Christmas night, Peg and Kim are preparing the Christmas tree. Kim goes and sees a wintry sight outside their home. Edward is working on a breathtaking ice sculpture. Kim is dancing around the presence of snow when Jim shouts over and startles the poor Edward. He accidentally scratches Kim's palm. While Peg brings her daughter inside for a cure, Jim pushes Edward out of Boggs' yard. Kim goes back outside and breaks up with Jim after losing sight of Edward. The furious Edward walks away from the town, tearing his jumpsuit and some plants apart. A neighbor reports what Edward did to the police, who appears minutes later, searching for Edward at Peg's house. Peg and Bill leave to search for Edward in the middle of the town, but Edward returns to their home alone after seeing a police car. Kim embraces the lonely Edward, who dozes again into another daydream where the inventor gave him a fake pair of hands. In his dream, he cut off the fingers and the palms after his father falls dead to the ground. He woke up from the trance again, scared that he might make a cut on Kim. Meanwhile, Jim and his drunk friend drive off the town towards Kim's house. On the way, the drunken men nearly hit Kevin. Edward jumps to save him from the car, but he ends up cutting Kevin in the face. Jim assumes that he was assaulting Kevin. The whole neighborhood goes outside after hearing the commotion. The police officer chases Edward, who flees back to his mansion at the top of the hill. Peg begs the angry mob to let Edward go. The police officer fires his gun thrice to fool the people that Edward is dead, but the skeptical and curious crowd also advances to the mansion. Kim follows Edward to the old, dark mansion. Little did she know, Jim follows her tracks to the attic and attempts to murder Edward. Kim stops Jim by knocking him to the ground and pointing Edward's blades to his neck. Jim pushes her over, which made Edward boil in a fury. He stabs him with one of his blades and leaves him to fall on the ground outside. Kim confesses that she loves Edward. When the mob reach the mansion, Kim fools them that Jim and Edward both died in a duel, showing Edward's fake hand cadaver. The crowd retreats back home forlornly. The grandmother ends the story by telling the little girl that she was Kim. She never saw Edward again. She believes Edward is an immortal who never ages. In Kim's late years, Edward still spends his time in the mansion, carving ice sculptures, which he remembers having Kim dance around the snow he has made.